Welcome back. Let's continue here now. Hundreds of people gathered in Tel Aviv to call for the Israeli government to secure the release of the remaining hostages held by Hamas. The protest came after the Israeli military admitted that it had killed 3 Israeli hostages in Gaza City after they were mistakenly identified as a threat. Now let's get an update. We cross to our correspondent, Trent Murray, who joins us live from Tel Aviv. Trent, thank you so much for your time. So we understand that the officials for the Israeli army are saying that initial inquiry into the accident has found that hostages were fired upon against Israel's rules of engagement. Just talk to us about the very latest in terms of this incident.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a pretty major announcement, isn't it, by the IDF. They have released early findings into their initial probe, and we are learning fresh details about the moments leading up to this incident. What the IDF is saying is that the soldiers that were on the ground there saw 3 men leave a building. All 3 of them were shirtless, and one of them was carrying a white cloth on a stick, clearly indicating an attempt at surrender. But the soldiers on the ground interpreted the 3 men, or mistook them, I suppose you should say, as a threat. They thought they may have been Hamas terrorists trying to lure them into a trap, and they opened fire. We have also learned that one of the men, upon being shot initially, actually cried out in Hebrew the word help. But again, the soldiers on the ground, it would appear, continued to open fire, and all 3 tragically died, which of course is very sad news for the families that have been anxiously waiting now for 71 days on their loved ones which have been in the Gaza Strip. We understand the 3 bodies were repatriated quite quickly back here to Israel. They were positively identified, and then the families have been informed. But there are still, of course, a lot of questions around all of this. As you mentioned, the IDF has said very clearly that this goes against their rules of engagement on the ground, and that they've already taken lessons from what happened. But they also said that this was an active combat zone, and these types of incidents can take place. They didn't factor in there may be hostages walking around in civilian clothing. What I should say, of course, as well, is this is just adding political pressure onto the government of Benjamin Netanyahu even more. He's already under incredible pressure. We are hearing tonight, actually, some of the families of the remaining hostages have said that they may launch a hunger strike in response to what they say is government inaction to get their loved ones home. That's the domestic political pressure, but of course there's also the international pressure when we're seeing the likes of the European Union, the African Union, the United Nations, even the US to some degree, putting pressure on Israel to maybe just wind back its military operations from the sort of high-tempo clearance operations that we've been seeing with a lot of heavy artillery and a lot of heavy air power. We know civilians continue to be caught in the crosshairs of all of this. The Hamas-run health ministry is saying that upwards or almost 19,000 civilians now have died in the Gaza Strip, but it appears Israel is not necessarily heeding those international calls. We've had another pretty big night of bombardment both in the north and the south of Gaza. A YMCA headquarters was allegedly hit, as well as several houses near a refugee camp. So look, the situation continues to remain incredibly tense, and it's an incredibly anxious wait from the Israeli side, I suppose you could say, for those families that are tonight going into their 71st evening without having their loved ones home.
Trent, thank you so much for that update. Trent Murray for us live from Tel Aviv.